Howdy again everyone. One of my favourite kinds of cameras in the world are entry-level full-frame cameras. I'll never forget the day my then girlfriend, now wife, got a Canon 6D and the way it opened up a whole world of full-frame photography for us. Well, here comes Nikon with an upgrade to their previous entry-level full-frame camera. Here we have their Z5 Mark II. It costs $1,700 body only, or £1,600 here in the UK, a little more than the Z5 when that camera came out 4 years ago, but the Mark II is a more ambitious model, and I don't know if you've noticed, but we've all suffered a lot of inflation over the past few years, not that we're getting paid anymore. Anyway, it's about $800 less than the Z6 Mark III, Nikon's next level 24 megapixel full frame camera, so you're still potentially getting a very good deal here, if the camera's any good, that is. I'd like to thank Nikon UK for loaning me this camera for testing, but as usual, this is a totally independent review. Do you remember my review of the Nikon ZF, a very nice full frame camera with a classic design? Well, in terms of outright specs, the Nikon Z5 Mark II is basically that camera, except with slightly improved video capability, different controls, and a more comfortable grip, and one or two other small differences. And this new Z5 Mark II is a big improvement of the original Z5, which was always a good camera for your money in itself. This new camera has one of Nikon's full-frame 24 megapixel backside illuminated sensors inside, which I think is left over from the Z6 Mark II, which is no bad thing at all. That sensor is image stabilized. Here's some footage with stabilization off and now turned on. As you can see, it does an excellent job here. Nikon's in-body stabilization is normally pretty fantastic, and with this camera you can link the stabilization to your focus point for better footage with wide-angle lenses. The camera features Nikon's fast Speed 7 processor, making it quite fast to use and handle, much faster than the original Z5, offering better image processing, 12-bit RAW video internally recorded at up to 4K 30 frames per second, 10-bit video at 4K 60 frames per second, albeit with a crop, a burst speed of around 14 frames per second, and a JPEG-only mode that uses a video stream to shoot 30 frames per second images with a pre-burst option and compressed RAW shooting options. Be careful with that option though, as it won't be compatible with some third-party processing software. The camera can also shoot in HEIF, of course. The processor also helps the camera's autofocus system, which is another good step up from the original Z5. It's not quite up to the same speed standards as the Nikon Z8 or Z9 of course, or the Z6 Mark III, and that autofocus can be tricked if you move around too erratically. But I had absolutely no issues with its subject tracking, and it features a number of useful tracking options, also like bird and vehicle tracking, so all but the most demanding sports shooters will be quite pleased here. We also get a very fast maximum mechanical shutter speed of 1/8000th of a second. Normally, entry-level bodies are slower than that, as well as a silent electronic shutter mode of course, although the camera's slightly older sensor will read a little slowly, so don't move your camera too much when shooting in silent mode. The camera even has a pre-release capture function for catching shots just before you press the shutter button, which can be handy for sports shooting. The camera also has a number of useful modes for astrophotography. There's a starlight view option to help you focus in on stars, and the warm display option is really handy, setting your camera's display at a very low level and a red colour, which really helps if you're shooting in pitch darkness, as you can see here. When it comes to build quality, this thing doesn't really feel like an entry-level camera body at all. In fact, it's very close to Nikon's more expensive options and will feel instantly recognizable to any Nikon shooter. While it doesn't have a magnesium alloy body, you still get absolutely loads of buttons here, as well as an autofocus joystick and AF on buttons, and all kinds of customizable switches. The drive mode button is at the top left, play button is on the bottom right, two customizable buttons on the front around the lens, front and rear control dials, and a special button at the top for changing your color profile, and a number of new color profiles are available. There's absolutely loads of them here, as you can see. Something missing is a top LCD screen, but there's got to be something missing on an entry-level camera body, hasn't there? The Z5 Mark II has a 3.68 million dot viewfinder, which is lovely and detailed and bright, in line with the competition, and at a 0.8 times magnification it's actually quite big too. It only has a tiny bit of lag to it that I could see, a little more than the faster Nikon Z8 and Z9 cameras, but still hardly a problem. The camera's 3.2-inch touchscreen flips outwards, which is always useful for video work or taking selfies, and with over 2 million dots, it's incredibly detailed and bright enough for use in any lighting conditions. Handy. The camera uses Nikon's EL15C batteries, which provide an average shooting time about 350 shots at least in my experience, and maybe about an hour and a half's worth of video, depends how you shoot with it, of course. That's a little less shooting time than the ZF camera, and also less than the original Z5. The camera has two UHS 2 SD card slots, which is quite a big deal on an entry-level camera. Rubber flaps conceal the camera's in and out ports on the other side, USB-C, micro HDMI, and headphone and microphone jacks. The headphone jack doubles as a remote control jack, and the camera can be charged by USB-C. The camera's menu system is a little daunting at first, but you get used to it, and it's ordered in a fairly logical way. The silent shooting mode option is in the setup menu, by the way, now, not in the photo shooting menu where it normally is. You can customize your own menu at the bottom of options you like to mess around with quite regularly, and you can customize the camera's quick eye menu as well. All in all, the Z5 Mark II has fantastic build quality and controllability. It's got everything even quite serious photographers could need here. So, let's look at image quality. As you can see here, the camera's RAW files capture excellent detail for a 24 megapixel sensor, and the JPEG files are looking very nice here too. I'd say that sharpening is slightly more aggressive than I like to see on those JPEGs, but colours, contrast, all fantastic. I had to process that RAW file with third-party software, by the way. When I did so with Nikon's NX Studio software, it kept adding the same sharpening as on the camera's JPEG files, and I couldn't turn that off. Maybe I was doing something wrong. Anyway, let's look at high ISO noise levels. ISO 100 to 800 look perfect. It's only at 1600 that we begin to lose the finest details. ISO 3200 still looks quite good, to be honest, but the fudging of fine details gets more noticeable at 6400, and 12800, while still usable, is a bit of an emergency option. Anyway, that's a good performance overall though, and quite comparable to the equivalent Canon 24 megapixel sensor found in the R8 and R6 Mark II cameras. It's pretty much the same image quality as the Nikon ZF. And like the ZF, this camera offers a 96 megapixel pixel shift mode also, and in my tests I got the best effect with the 32 shot mode, and of course using a steady tripod, which you will need. You have to use computer software to automatically stitch those pictures together, but with a wing on a prayer and the wind blowing in the right direction, you can get good results here. Just make sure absolutely nothing is moving in your picture for this. Here's the camera's dynamic range, where I am bringing up an image from almost pitch black shadows. Again, this is a good enough job for a full frame sensor, although some more expensive cameras can do better. Let's move on and have a look at video quality then. First off, 4K at 60 frames per second with a 1.5 times crop. Okay, we are seeing an average amount of detail here. It's only at ISO 1600 that we begin to see noise creeping in. ISO 3200, 6400 and 12800 get progressively noisier. I wouldn't personally use 6400 or 12800. Okay, let's try 4K at 25 frames per second. We see about the same level of noise, perhaps just a touch less, and a little more detail. ISO 3200 looks a little cleaner than at 60 frames per second, but again, 6400 and 12800 are getting a bit too noisy. Overall, while I've seen better video quality than this on more expensive full-frame cameras, it's still a nice show and far better than shooting on an aps-c camera. The Z5 Mark II also has a high-speed 120 frames per second mode, shooting in 1080p high definition, and that footage looks pretty gorgeous with loads of fine detail, although of course it's not 4K. Let's have a look at rolling shutter. At 4K and 60p it's there, but actually I have seen worse than this before. At 4K and 25p, oddly enough, it actually looks a bit worse to me. If you're shooting some kind of action sequence, then switch over to 1080p, where at any frame rate, rolling shutter is minimized. I'm going to wrap things up here, although the camera has other features I haven't covered, including a focus shift mode for focus tacking, flicker reduction, interval timer shooting, and time-lapse video modes. Well, you've probably got this camera's number by now. It's one of the best entry-level cameras out there, although in all fairness, it is a little more expensive than some of the cheaper competition. I was a fan of the Canon EOS R8 when it came out, and I still like it. While it's cheaper than the Z5 Mark II, not to mention much smaller and lighter, the Nikon camera walks all over it with its in-body image stabilization, better video quality, better screen, faster maximum shutter speed, longer battery life, extra memory card slot, and autofocus joystick. The Z5 Mark II is also serious competition for Nikon's own Z6 Mark III camera. The Z5 Mark II can do most of what the Z6 Mark III can do, but the Z6 Mark II has a way faster sensor, which gives some real speed and quality advantages when shooting sports, shooting otherwise with the electronic shutter, and shooting video. And the Z6 Mark III has a tougher magnesium alloy body and slightly more sophisticated autofocus. The Z5 Mark II, though, would absolutely be my choice for a lower priced full frame camera, even if it's still not cheap, so highly recommended. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my channel where you can find playlists for the camera equipment you are looking for. And as usual, a special thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members who have helped to keep this channel trucking on sponsorship free for absolutely years now. Supporters get all kinds of extra bonus content and early access to reviews, so check it out in the description below. And ciao for now.